Hello, my name is Ralph Friedrichs. I'm an addiction recovery coach and the host of the Take Your Life Back Today show. As an addiction recovery coach, I want to share something with you. Let me be crystal clear to leave an everlasting impact upon you. Just imagine being buried alive. You're in the coffin, but you also know you're not dead. You don't know how to open the coffin and push the enormous weight of the dirt above the lid. You just think today is the day you're going to die. But then you think, maybe if I bang on the lid, it'll unsettle the dirt, and maybe, just maybe, somebody might find the dirt moving on top and start digging their way down to help me. This is what it's like to find yourself at the lowest point of alcohol and drug addiction. You know you need help, you know you can't do it on your own, but you don't know where to turn. In reality, there are probably people standing by your grave, mourning the loss, but you don't know that. You just think today you will die. Usually, though, people don't think about death when they're habitually abusing drugs and alcohol. In order to feed an addiction, you have to be great at repressing the fear of death. I often ask you, my audience, did it ever cross your mind that you might take something that the Lord Jesus gave to you, your precious life, away by overdosing and abusing drugs and alcohol? You eliminate your own life. What a selfish act. More selfishly is to take your life because of your misuse of drug and alcohol away from your children, your grandchildren, your husband, your wife, your parents. With this, I want to leave one last thought on your mind. Don't be the person on these index cards that I'm reading about that waited until it was way too late to seek help. If you're watching me and you have a pulse and you're breathing, you still have an opportunity to reach out for help. Give me a call at 844-405-HELP, and I promise you I will help you take your life back before your life is gone. Folks, there are people like Larry Geis from the Geis Academy at 516-458-2741, 516-458-2741. Larry Geis will help you go from your addiction to your recovery, from your low self-esteem to raise your self-esteem, from your depression to happier times. He will lay out a plan for a better today and a brighter tomorrow. Larry Geis can be found at www.odysseyconsultant.org. Larry Geis has over 30 years experience as a life coach, as an addiction recovery coach. Larry and I always tell folks like you, it doesn't matter where you've been, it doesn't matter where you're coming from. What matters is that you're reaching out for help, that you're not like this person that I just read about in the coffin alive reaching out for help. You are physically, verbally screaming, touching out, reaching out for help. And Larry Geis is right there to grab your arm and pull you in to help you. Larry Geis at 516-458-2741 will help you take your life back. Folks, Super Tuesday is right around the corner. First, let me be very clear. I don't condone, nor do I have a preference in reading this material, The Presidential Candidate U-Turn on Addiction. In other words, although my mind is made up on who I believe should be president, I will not share that, because there's one thing I have learned, folks, from my Facebook and Twitter accounts and my Yahoos and my Bings and all my other accounts, is that religion and politics can be so lethal by sharing your views. So the reason I am doing this show is to give you, my audience, an opportunity to hear the difference between this, or not the difference, between these candidates on this segment, which is the 6 front-running presidential candidates have stopped being silent about addiction and seem to actually care. I want you to see their views on addiction. Following this show, which is going to be airing on the 28th, which is tomorrow, on the 29th, there will be one other show that I am doing before Super Tuesday, and that show is called The Remaining Candidates and Their Views on Mental Health. So let me be clear. Today we are going to talk about the the front-running presidential candidates' views on addiction, and then on the 29th we will talk about their views on mental health. This is the presidential candidate U-Turn on Addiction. Just a few months ago, addiction was barely getting mentioned in the race to the White House, but now it's a hot topic on every candidate's lips. Here's a look at some of the front runners, and they stand on drug policy issues right now. And although there are 7 front runners, I only have 6 listed here. Let's go right to Donald Trump. Over the years, Trump has been all over the place on drug policy. Back in 1990, he suggested legalizing all drugs and keeping the profits for drug education. We're losing badly on the war on drugs, he said at an event in Florida, according to the Sarasota Herald-Tribune. Quote, unquote, you have to legalize drugs to win that war. You have to take the profit away from these drug seizures. But 25 years later, he wasn't even in favor of marijuana legalization based on his comments at a 2015 CPAC conference. In response to a question about marijuana legalization, he said, quote unquote, I say it's bad. Medical marijuana is just another thing, but I think it's bad, and I feel very strongly about that. However, in October, he clarified that it's okay, leaving the matter up to the individual states. At a rally in Nevada, he said, in terms of marijuana and legalization, according to, I think, should be the state issue, state by state, according to the Washington Post. While it's not exactly a progressive view, at this point it's still more aggressive than some. Chris Christie, for instance, has vowed to crack down on recreational marijuana use, even in the states that have already legalized it. A side note, Chris Christie just yesterday endorsed Donald Trump for President of the United States. Another hot-bottom drug issue this election season has been the heroin epidemic. Trump's proposed solution to that same solution he offers to seemingly everything, build a wall. Back in June, Trump enraged Latinos and sensible people everywhere when he blames various types of crime, including drug trade, on Mexicans. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending the people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing these problems with us, he said. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and in some, I assume, are good people. In January, Trump took that thought to its logical for Trump conclusion and advocated again for his border wall idea, this time implying that it could help stem the heroin crisis. At a rally in New Hampshire, he fielded a question about heroin and, oddly, lapsing into millennium speak, replied, the problem of heroin in New Hampshire is unbelievable. It's like an unbelievable problem that you have. But for this unbelievable problem, Trump offered this unbelievable answer. It's always the first question I get, and they have a problem all over. It comes through the border, the frontrunner said, according to Politico. We're going to build a wall, number one. We're going to build a wall, and it's going to be a real wall. Apparently, he doesn't think imaginary walls win on the war of drugs. Of course, real walls won't either. As we continue on, we go to Hillary Clinton. Like Trump, Clinton has been confronted with heroin crisis during visits to New Hampshire. Speaking in Salem in December, Clinton talked about how big the issue has become on the campaign trail. I've had 2 town hall meetings right here in New Hampshire, she said, where the only subject was substance abuse, according to the Huffington Post. She went on to ask the crowd how many people have witnessed or have been affected by mental health problem or substance abuse, and nearly every hand in the house went up. Because of moments like that, elsewhere in the campaign trail in September, Clinton announced a $10 billion plan to fight addiction. This is not new, she wrote when she unveiled the plan in an opt for a New Hampshire union leader. We're not just now discovering this problem, but we should be saying enough is enough, she wrote. It's time that we recognize as a nation that has far too long we have been way too quiet on the drug epidemic. Plain and simple, drug and alcohol addiction is a disease, not a moral failing, and we must treat it as a disease. The plan would include $7.5 billion in funding for the states to develop and improve problems to fight addiction. Also, the plan would make sure first responders have naloxone, train healthcare providers to recognize substance abuse before prescribing certain drugs. We go to Ted Cruz. Like Trump, Cruz has tied the solution to addiction to the border security. In January, the Canadian-born candidate said that cartels are trafficking drugs in vast quantities from Mexico and cracking down on immigration and its solution. He also struggled to connect with voters on the issue by making it personal. Carly Fiorina has spoken repeatedly about the stepdaughter struggled with addiction, and it turns out that Cruz has a similar tale to tell. I know New Hampshire, in particular, has been hit hard with heroin epidemic, and it's really ugly, Cruz said during his January visit to Keene, according to BuzzFeed. I will note that this is an issue I have more than passing experience with. My older sister Miriam died of a drug overdose, and so she was 9 years older than I am. She had a hard life. She made a lot of foolish decisions over and over and over again. And she had problems with drinking and substance abuse. One morning she didn't wake up. She had overdose. It is a horrible scourge in our society. Those in the addiction and recovery community might reasonably hope that Cruz understands addiction as more than a lot of foolish decisions. But it's great to see him opening up on the issue at some capacity. Bernie Sanders, the senator from Vermont, scored points in the recovery community when he came out swinging during December debate in New Hampshire. I think we have a lot to tell the medical profession and doctors who are prescribing opiates and the pharmaceutical industry that have got to start getting their act together. We cannot have this huge number of opiates out there throughout the country where young people are taking them, getting hooked, and then going to heroin. He drew applause when he went on to add, we need to understand that addiction is a disease, not a criminal activity. And that means radically changing the way we deal with mental health and addiction issue. Again, tomorrow's mental health, where they stand on that. At a January debate, Sanders again tackled the issue, focusing responsibility on drug companies. There is a lot of responsibility on the part of pharmaceutical and drug companies who are producing all these drugs and not looking for not facing the consequences of them. Sanders, along with Clinton and Republican Elijah Cummings, penned a letter to National Governors Association and National Attorneys General asking them to help push for agreements between states and naloxone distributors. The opiate abuse epidemic is a public health emergency that must be addressed, and no company should jeopardize the progress many states have made in tackling this emergency by overcharging critically important drug like naloxone. Where's Ben Carson staying on this? The bucket of crazy known as Ben Carson has, of course, continued to be crazy when it comes to addressing addiction. Carson offered a real head-scratcher when asked about addiction on Face the Nation in November. Usually addictions happen in people who are vulnerable, who are lacking something in their lives, he said. And so we have to really start asking ourselves, what have we taken out of the lives of these Americans? Wow, that is a head-scratcher. What are some of those values, principles that allowed us to descend to the ladder of success so rapidly to the very pinnacle of the world and the highest pinnacle anyone else has ever reached? And why are we in the process of throwing away all our values and principles for the sake of political correctness? Unlike some of the other in the race, Carson has not offered any specific plan to combat addiction, and disappointingly for a doctor, he hasn't even shown any basic understanding of what addiction really is. Instead, he's content to sit back and blame it all on political correctness and Mexico. Echoing Trump, Cruz, Carson spoke about drugs in relation to the southern border. At a January town hall in Staten Island, a neurosurgeon said that the law enforcement at the border had shown him incredible loads of heroin and marijuana. It's coming through like an express highway, and it's not stopping. And that's why in a lot of cities, you can buy a pack of heroin for less than you can buy for a pack of cigarettes. Last but not least is Marco Rubio. The Florida senator has not spoken as much about drugs as some of the other candidates. One of the notable odd and uniform things he has said, though, was an attempt to use uptick opiate use of justification for opposing marijuana legalization. And I just want you to know, on the sidebar, I made this notation. Marco Rubio's brother-in-law served 12 years in prison for being a drug lord, whether he was the actual drug lord or connected to a drug lord. 12 years in prison. His brother-in-law, married to his sister. You talk about New Hampshire for a moment. One of the stories that has been reported nationally is the fact that many of the people who today are dependent on heroin is because they became dependent on prescription opiates. Rubio said when asked why he does not support marijuana legalization at a forum in New Hampshire in August on the Daily Beast. What's especially weird about the statement is that it would seem to imply that he is against medical marijuana also, since he is pointing out prescription substances as the source of problems. However, he doesn't oppose the use of medical marijuana, just recreational pot, according to an October article on Mother Jones. Folks, if you notice, there was one person missing, and I couldn't find Governor Kasich from Ohio where he stands on addiction. So I could not include it in the list, but we do have Donald Trump, we have Hillary Clinton, we have Bernie Sanders. Both of those are Democrats. Republican Ted Cruz, Republican Ben Carson, and Republican Marco Rubio. And of course, as you know, Trump is also Republican. So this is the presidential candidate U-turn on addiction. These are 6 front-running presidential candidates that have stopped being silent about addiction and seem to actually care. So we discussed it. Keep in mind, my views do not matter. My selection for president does not matter. These are facts that are out on the internet of their position on addiction that could be Googled. All you need to do is Google the presidential candidate U-turn on addiction, and you'll see my views, my thoughts don't matter when it comes to that. I am purely the messenger letting you know, giving you a chance to make your selection for Super Tuesday and after, depending on where you're located. But Super Tuesday is a huge, as Trump would say, a huge day, because right now where Donald Trump stands, if he takes what it looks like to be 8 out of the 11 states, that could have a huge impact on the outcome of the Republican frontrunner. Right now he is trailing somewhat in Texas, but he has a huge lead in Florida. I will say Rubio needs to win Florida, and Ted Cruz need to win Texas in order to stay in the race. So you be the judge. You make your decision. My job is just to bring out the different criteria. And like I said, we will be discussing tomorrow where the 2016 candidates stand on mental health issues. So that will be addressed tomorrow. I hope to God that this was somewhat informative to help give you a chance to make your selection for a U.S. president. Please stay tuned for tomorrow's show to follow. Today's show is the 28th. Tomorrow will be the 29th, and that will be the last 2 times that I will address these presidential candidates before the Super Tuesday, which is Tuesday the 1st. Depending on the outcome, if it narrows down, we'll get some more views on certain other issues like domestic violence issues, anything related to what's related to what I talk about on these shows. I hope to God you have a great day. I hope to God you all have a sober day. And please, when you make a decision for president, think from your heart, not from the media. And have a blessed day.